Hey everybody, before we get started, just remind you this episode brought to you by patrons like Adam DeHarp, Aga Comics, Architect 10, Blacklist OG, Carlos, Qua, Jeremy Vasquez, Jonathan Sandoval, Kylie Denton, Legendary Boss Hunter, Liam Kessler, Regent Raptor, Rogue Robin, Shawnee P, some guy named Bob, Soda Son 042, Senator Fee, and Zach Reed. If you like what we do and want to see us do more, consider supporting us on Patreon. You can get access to episodes early and lots of other goodies and helps us out. Thank you for your support, everybody. Hello everyone and welcome back to Let's Talk FGO Wanted, the show where we let you know if you want to roll a 5-star. Alrighty, so it's gonna be a new year, guys. Well, as much as we're all just happy to see December 32nd roll around, no, it's gonna be 2021. I'm sure everybody wants a New Year's resolution and to go ahead and get on out of here. There is one more last big thing that we all need to be ready for in the new year. The ultimate excitement. FGO releases a new unit. Actually, there's going to be a couple, but the premier new servant in the time period of New Year's will be Beni-Enma, a new saber who does stuff. And actually, this year we're getting a, so far unique anyway, feature where there's actually a whole New Year's event, the Sparrow Inn, which is, a proper thing. Related to Enmate, which will come up later. There's a pun involved, okay? Anyway, if this is your first time watching Let's Talk FGO Wanted, how this works is basically, I'm going to break this down into 4 sections. We're going to talk about a character's real-life history and folklore. We're going to talk about their fate lore with a capital L. We're going to talk about their mechanics, and then we're going to talk about their rarity. Not their star rarity, but we're going to talk about their frequency of rate-ups and whatnot, which can often make or break a unit in addition to mechanics and all kinds of other stuff going on. Right? Okay. You got it? Cool. So, we're going to talk about Beni-Enma. She's a saber today. And I think we've covered everything. We've talked about the event. We've talked about New Year's. I mentioned the outline. So, I think it's time to just dive into some history and stuff. Okay, now, so follow me on this one. It'll come back around in a second. But the primary bit of folklore that Beni-Enma is drawn from is a traditional Japanese fable called Shita-kiri Suzume, which literally means tongue-cut sparrow. This is one of Beni-Enma's the servant's aliases, and it's honestly a pretty archetypal story. We're not going to get into the super details, but we will cover the high level there just because we can. But this is like an archetypal type of fairy story, a traditional folktale in the Japanese, and the rough plotline goes as follows. There's an old woodcutter who lives in the woods. He cuts woods and fishes for money. I was going to say for fun. No, for funds, for money. He's honest and kind, but he has an arrogant and greedy wife, because of course he does. It's definitely some kind of subtext there. Anyway, one morning he goes into the mountains. He finds a injured sparrow. He feels sorry for the bird. He takes it back to his home. He feeds it rice to recover. His wife is a huge asshole. She doesn't think that they should waste effort on the bird. He continues to care for it. He goes back to the mountains. He leaves in the care of the woman. She leaves to go fish and ignores the sparrow. His wife does, and then the sparrow gets into some of their food. As revenge, basically, she's angry for eating their starch or whatever. She cuts out its tongue, hence the name tongue-cut sparrow, and sends it flying back into the mountains. The old man then comes to search for the bird. He finds his way to a bamboo grove where the sparrow's inn is located. That's a different folkloric tone. The sparrows basically greet him, they, give him well wishes, take him to his friend, they hang out, it's cool, it's fun. When he once goes to leave, he's offered 2 baskets. This may be a theme that comes up later, remember the 2 baskets. Anyway, there's a small basket and a large basket. Being an old dude, he's like, oh, hey, I'll take the small basket, it would be the least heavy. He goes home, he opens up the basket, it's full of shitloads of treasure. Treasure for days. The greedy and arrogant wife, however, learns that there's a bigger basket, so she goes all the way up to the inn and takes the larger basket for herself. She's warned not to open it before she gets home, because of course she is. Turns out she's a dumbass. She opens the box. It's full of snakes and other horrible creatures. They startle her, and she falls down the mountain, presumably to her death. And that is the incredibly Cliff Notes version, high level of that folk story, right? And this sets up a lot of the basic things you'll see with Beni-Enma's character design. Yes, she is a sparrow. And we'll get into some of the other weirdness and fate in a second. That's what the second section is for. But it's reflected in a few of her skills and other abilities. And in general, this is kind of the original source of all of her, whatever stuff. And in general, this is a pretty common theme. I used Okami music at the front of this. There's a reference to it, though that's actually like a couple of different folk tales involved, but there's elements of that in an Okami side quest. There's a Sparrow Inn, which is going to show up in the event. So, I don't think there's much more purpose in lingering on the folklore. Like I said, it's a very archetypal folklore, even if it has some Japanese specifics. So let's talk about the Fate thing. So, in Fate, she's called Beni-Enma, i.e. the Crimson Judge, the Red Judge of the Underworld, and is... I don't think she actually has the Oni trait. Let me double check. But the idea is that... okay, yes, she does have the new trait Oni. So, the idea is that Beni-Enma is... or rather, was a sparrow, right? And basically through reincarnation. Actually, I think it's semi-spoilers. You only get this bond level when you complete the event, but this will kind of explain it. So she starts as a young girl who wanders in the mountains and dies, but then she gets basically reincarnated and serves as a judge for an adjutant judge, we should say, for one of the figures of the underworld, Yamaraja, who is the source of part of her noble phantasm stuff. We'll talk about more in the mechanics. But, so she lives on the surface and weighs the sins of people, but then gets interested in the locals and gets reincarnated into her Sparrow girl form and fulfills the legend, and then at the end returns to the Sparrow Inn and also as a judge of hell. Why is she also an Oni who judges hell? It's because of a pun. The phrase Enmate from the name of the inn also could be taken to mean Enma, judge of hell. So it's a classic Nasu syncretism pun in Fate that I assume is basically just he and the other writers and researchers run with it to be like, okay, Sparrow, Oni, how do we do this? She's also a ghost girl. Yeah, that's basically that. And she will be a major character appearing in the Daily Report of Sparrow Inn event because it's set her Sparrow Inn. And actually, her existence has been suggested for a long time through Tamamo, Kiyohime, etc.'s email circles. She is a chef who has taught a lot of heroic spirits to, cook. Cooking is her main thing. And there's even more, like... I think in her bond list it lists out, Tamamo, Kiyohime, Osakabe Hime, Suzuku Gozen, and a character who has not appeared yet. Hold on. Takiyasha Hime? Ooh, okay. Neat. Alright, I know nothing about who this person is, other than that they are... The literal translation is... Waterfall Princess? Yeah, Waterfall Demon Princess. Okay. Alright, there's another yokai lady, so hey, cool. Maybe there's a future servant design. Anyway, a lot of them refer to Beni-Enma as their sensei. It's a whole thing with her. She will be a major character in the story. We're not going to get into the details, but yeah, she runs the Sparrow's Inn. She is a judge of hell. The two overlap. It's weird. Speaking of how they overlap, let's jump into those mechanics, because they actually do some fun stuff with this. Okidoki, Artichoke. So the mechanics. Pretty simple. So, she's a saber. Covered that already. Her attack is on the lower end of the scale. It's tied with Nero Bride, who, believe it or not, does not have a super high individual attack stat, but they're both single-target arts, so you can kind of see why that exists. Now, on the flip side, in terms of HP, though, Beni-Enma is actually under a couple of rungs. She's, I don't want to say, shockingly fragile, per se, but she is, third lowest and is below units like Sigrid and Arthur, who have boatloads of HP, or boatloads of attack, to make up for their lower HP, because they have the exact same stat value. So, and it's not even really truly that lower, but Beni-Enma is in the category of 5-star sabers who are beat out in terms of HP by Siegfried, so wild. Which Nero Bride is not, so it's a little weird, right? I don't want to say she's truly fragile, but she's definitely squishier than Bride, which is, again, very interesting considering they have the exact same attack stat and the same attack niche. But anyway, we'll move past that. We'll move past me trying to apply superlatives in ways that I can't understand through various graphs. We'll just talk about numbers on screen. Pretty typical star generation, star absorption stats. First, Saber. Her NP charge per attack is pretty average for 3 hit counts, but notice she has those sweet 6 hits on quick and a 5 hit extra. So you're looking at when you're using her 2 arts cards, because she does have a Saber style arts, Buster, quick deck. When you're using your 2 arts cards, you'll probably have what you will think of as pretty normal NP gain, probably not too sluggish, and actually a little bit better because of one of her passives we'll talk about way later. But not too sluggish, but not like crazy good. But still, you're not going to probably feel pain. But if you definitely string together an AQQ, like a Brave Chain with an extra, you are going to probably generate a surprisingly extra little tick of NP, because that quick has that big extra hit. That also means that since Sabers have fairly average star generation, you're looking at some recent gen stats on that. For a lot of reasons, actually, too. So, this is an arts character who not excessively generates stars, but if you incorporate that quick cards or you're doing Brave Chains for extra hits, with only 1 hit on the Buster card, that's not crazy good for that. But you're looking at a decent opportunity to generate stars and a pretty decent NP gen. Otherwise, deck's not really that interesting. Just the numbers add up in some fun ways. So, her NP is a single target arts card. It has 5 hits. So you're looking at very decent NP generation, especially if you can slap an overkill, which you probably can because it is a purely damaging NP. There's no special booster effect. Sadly, there's no defense ignore or pierce invul or anything. So you gotta work around hard defenses a different way. But even so, it's just raw damage type with 2 trait damage modifiers, which apply for the rest of the turn, by the way. So if you're doing a NPAA chain, you'll get that extra damage and probably get into that big overkill. So basically, she gives herself damage bonus versus chaotic enemies and versus evil enemies for the rest of the turn. Starting at 40% base with overcharge. By the way, these are cumulative if you face a chaotic evil enemy, so that will add up to a total 80% extra damage, which is pretty brutal if you're hitting enemies who are chaotic evil. You're good. Alignment thing. Yeah, there's probably a chart for this somewhere. I'm not going to work too much about it, but just keep this in mind, right? Oh gosh, I should look it up, though, because I want to look up Lancers that are chaotic evil. Not Lancers. Lancers. Sorry, I'm getting my classes backwards. Hold on. Let me just get out a chart so I can refer to it later. We may need this. Okay, I'm back. I'm doing my research. So there aren't a lot of chaotic evil Lancers. It's mostly just Liz, Kyo, Summer Kyo specifically, Aresh, Summer Ibaraki. There are a lot of chaotic evil berserkers, though, like Lubu, Vlad, Asterios, Caligula, regular Kyo. When Jekyll and Hyde goes Jekyll mode, Ku Alter, Atalanta Alter, future unit Salome, and Ibaraki Doji, so you can definitely get some big energy out of it. There are also quite a lot of extra classes, like Avengers are almost always chaotic evil. Summer BB is chaotic evil. You've got units like Kiara and Ashia Domen in the future. Foreigners like Abigail Williams and future Van Gogh. All the beast-type enemies you'll run into are chaotic evil, and they usually take neutral damage from this kind of stuff. So you've got an interesting variety of units who get both damage modifiers. There are also quite a lot of chaotic good and chaotic neutral servants. There's not an excess of them who are Lancers, but there are a few. So, and same with evil stuff too. There's not a lot of lawful evil servants, period. Or actually, I think, is there even less neutral evil? Let me double check. Yeah. Though there are quite a few Lancers in that zone. Still, it's a decent spread across 2 alignment axes that you'll be able to turn into an offensive push, and especially the double trait damage covers a pretty wide variety of servants you may want to take. So this makes her a fairly decent, in terms of output, general hitter for being a damaging saber type, and she's going to punch out of her weight class. A decent amount of the time you can hit at least 1 alignment, especially against Berserkers or Lancers, and then there's a non-zero chance you will get a class advantage level damage inherently on a chaotic evil enemy, and even then, there's enough chaotic evil enemies, it's a very popular alignment, that you will get the big bonus damage on this. God help you if you get some overcharge in there. Alright, so a very useful, though not universally useful, single target boss hitter. she will beat up a lot of servants, and there are a lot of enemies of various alignments as well. Let's talk about the skills now, since we lingered a lot on doing our NP math. Her first skill is a very basic bitch mind die fake, gives her an evade for 1 turn, and gives her 20 to 40% critical strength up for 3 turns. So this is pretty good. She's got a hard defense. Evades aren't as good as invols, but still pretty decent. There are a lot of damage-dealing units who don't have any defense, so she can take care of herself, and she will actually like that critical up. You really want some arts crits in there. Heck, you really want arts crits after an NP, so you can do that bonus trait damage and get refund. And hey, guys, remember the baskets? Yeah, so she's got 2 basket skills, box of stars, star boxes, large and small. In case you forgot from the legend like 5 minutes ago, the large box contains evil things. And so basically this does an AoE defense down for all enemies, 10 to 20% 3 turns, decreases their critical chance 20 to 30% for 3 turns, gives them all NP seal for 1 turn, but does heal them all by 100 HP as a demerit. So honestly, 1k HP, not a huge deal. Like if you're trying to do like curse strats, yes, that matters. Or any kind of DOT. Kiyohime is about to get an upgrade for even more burn memes, stuff like that. But 1k is not really a big deal, most of all, in terms of damage output. Though I'm sure occasionally some people will probably pop this skill and then regret it. Like, they'll have an enemy who's got, like, 1k HP left, and they'll be like, damn it, you know. But this is a pretty standard AoE art stall skill, you know. Reduces enemies' critical chance, making it less likely that they can beat you up. Reduces their defense to amplify your attack put out. And does NP seal, which remember means they cannot use NPs and they cannot charge NP ticks. So that's a pretty good effect overall. 1 turn NP seal, that's another on-demand NP shutoff, similar to her evade to dodge things, and it works against enemies who have like Pierce and Vol or Sure Hit NPs as well. Reduce their critical chance of their defense, pretty good. The 1k HP will not be a big deal. Third skill is the small box. This is the one that contains all the treasure, as you can see from its design. So, all attacks get, or all allies get an attack boost for 3 turns, standard charisma, 10 to 20%. It increases all allies' cleanse resistance, so their resistance to buff removals for 1 turn, 50 to 100%. If you're a Yume Ren stan like me, this is pretty cool. But just in general, this is a very decent buff that scales well with a skill that you probably want to scale up, because it's got an NP battery on it for the team, 10 to 20%. Another typical thing for a team battery, but still, that's pretty good. That means if you've got, you know, multiple K-scopes, you can run into NPs immediately. It can top off allies who have other charge situations. And just in general is really good, especially since she is an arts unit, fundamentally, I think, you know, with 2 arts cards that are decent and an arts NP and an arts self-buff. So this, you know, gives you your attack up, this gives you NP gauge, all allies heal 1k, not a big deal, unless you've got some multipliers on that. All enemies also heal 1k as a demerit. Again, that shouldn't be a huge deal unless they've got, like, their own super severe healing increase effect. The healing is really negligent, but this is, you know, an AoE attack, AoE NP gauge, also comes with a deep buff removal resist. I don't know how useful that is right now, like outside of niche situations, but it's a good effect to have, especially if you deal with more annoying enemies who can remove your buffs. So it's got a very positive response. And I think all in all, this plus her NP puts her firmly in a pretty typical art strategy where you want to try and spam NP very hard, and you want to make sure that while you're building up NP over turns, enemies cannot kill you, especially with their NPs. So you can do stuff like critical hit chance down, NP seal. She is mostly an aggressive player herself, but a lot of her buffs are either on all enemies or on all allies, so she's not necessarily overtly selfish, and can help other team hitters, like if you've got AoE units who need to farm to tear off mobs or something, or move through waves, you can do all that stuff. The only other thing I would say is that, and this makes sense considering that her damage multiplier can get so big on her NP, she doesn't have a lot of inherent damage steroids. It's a 20% defense down for all enemies and a 20% attack up for all allies herself. That swings together to be about a 40% if you're applying them both at once, but that's not crazy good. Compared to, like, you know, if you had, like, 3 damage buffs that were each 30%, that would multiply to be more than just a straight-up 240%. But it's still a decent damage modifier, and again, this is actually probably why her HP levels are lower, because her attack value is kind of... what's the right word? Basically, her attack output isn't as low as you'd think from her raw numbers. She's very unassuming, but actually does a lot of damage, with that 40%, 40% trait damages on her NP, and then the ability to stack another 40% attack up, basically, with a little bit of charge, with a little bit of effect. All in all, she will be really good at cutting down bosses, as you might expect, Have a lot of fun that way. So, passive skills, she actually has a lot. I knew she had a lot, but I was thinking to myself about how many she's got, and I'm like, man, that is a lot when I actually wrote these notes down. So, she's got Magic Resistance A. She's a high-level saber. That makes a lot of sense. It will absorb a decent amount of debuffs. So, she's got Independent Action A, which is it's 10% for A. Critical Strength, so she's got an inherent crit mod. Not a big one, but does have an inherent one. She's also got Presence Concealment A, like an assassin. So remember how I talked about how with those hits and her already pretty decent star gen stat, she was good at that? Yeah, also she has a 10% on top of that. Now, you're probably not going to get a lot out of it. Again, one-hit buster cards, only one quick card. But if you're stringing together Brave Chains, you'll probably actually generate a decent number of stars off this raw stat. She has a special ability called Lodging Creation, which is basically, it's just a custom version of Territory Creation. It increases her art's effectiveness by 10%, even though it's only rated B. So, again, she has not a big one, but does have an inherent mod to her NP levels and her main card hits. Be very effective at that, again. Damage very unassuming. And finally, that debuff block icon is a special passive she has called Ventriloquism. This is a thing we're going to start seeing occasionally with units, where they're going to be straight up immune to certain debuffs. So, Beni-Enma is, because she can communicate even though her tongue is cut out, because she's the tongue-cut Sparrow, remember, she is immune to Skill Seal. I would prefer to immune to NP Seal, but I suppose that would be very annoying on a boss version of her. But yeah, it's not a huge deal, but she can't ever be Skill Sealed, so that very occasionally causes a problem, and especially because she is a boss killer, you are probably using her against big, beefy enemies who will like to do annoying things like Skill Seal. So, this means that you can't ever be Skill Sealed out of her battery, you can't ever be Skill Sealed out of her evade. It's got a decent effect, even if Skill Seal isn't the worst debuff to be hit by. Actually, I just realized we already saw some characters with specifics. Some are BBs immune to burn, but no, this is continuing that trend. And there are a couple more units in the future who are immune to stuff like Charm specifically. I think there might be more units immune to burn. There's a few characters who are outright immune to certain debuffs. So, Beni-Enma is immune to Skill Seal. So, you can see her whole package there. Pretty resilient arts. She has a little bit of inherent crit support, both in terms of star gen and crit damage. Got a little bit of inherent arts buffs. Units she goes with, team synergy, obviously it's got to be Tamamo. Got to put Tamamo out there. Tamamo has the heals, which helps because, like we said, Beni-Enma's inherent HP values are not super high for a 5-star. Tamamo will give her the big arts buff also with that heal option, 30 to 50% targetable arts up for three turns is very good. Tamamo is about to get her curse buff, which means it will give the team 20 to 30% NP damage for 3 turns. Beni-Enma will love that, getting more damage multipliers on board. And of course, Tamamo's NP increases allies' NP gauge straight up. She also heals them and does that cooldown reduction, which you are probably going to want because all of Beni-Enma's skills do have a 6-turn minimum cooldown, so a little bit longer than the average. 6 isn't the worst, but it's definitely something that puts you out there. If you can get Tamamo's NP to proc, you can speed that up by a turn or more. Caster Artori is a good other unit. She's got that hardened defense on her NP, which is, another form of hard defense, which Beni-Enma is not going to say no to, and does give you pretty solid attack rate ups and removes, AoE debuff cleanse. Has additional trait damage, targetable invuls, though threat to humanity is not as broad as chaotic evil, but there are some chaotic evil threats to humanity, Though I would say that, again, the heals and the skill cooldown do mean that Tamamo is not dead as far as support for, Beni-Enma specifically works. She legit has a lot of synergy there. Shocking, nobody. You also can't go wrong with just a generic, just a generic waiver. Honestly, with Merlin's ability to do hard defenses and constant healing and NP gen, he's not actually a bad choice either. Beni-Enma is a saber. She does have 2 buster cards and does have inherent crit modifiers. Sadly, the only support caster who is not at all good with Beni-Enma, I would say, is probably Scotty, unless you want to just string together cheap arts chains, because while Beni-Enma's 1 quick card is really good, it's only 1, it's probably not worth the hassle. There are also, lower rarity support units. Kazgil is a great option with that extra star generation effect, right? As well as, team arts, team attack. Blends together very well. Though I do think that both Castoria and Tamamo, with their specific hardened defenses, and especially Tamamo's healing ability, also mesh very well with Beni-Enma. So keep that kind of stuff in mind, and just in general, if you're looking for team synergy, look for characters who buff team arts. There are a few. You can use, speaking of, sabers, you could use Prince of Linling. He would go very well together with Beni-Enma as a saber as well. You're looking for arts support units and characters who can do damage reduction type support. Beni-Enma does have a hard defense, but it is on a 6-turn clock, and it's only 1. And like I said, HP level's a little bit lower than you'd think. Because of her extra damage outputs, I think she traded some extra HP, so she's a little squish. Not a big squish, but a little squish. Did she? So, healers, hard defensors or just defensive buffers, Kazgil has that defense up. Think about that in general when you're talking about team synergy. You could probably throw a Hokusai in there as an alternate AoE attacker, because Hokusai would do defense down with her arts cards and can mop up ads, so Beni-Enma can focus on a boss, because you're probably using Hokusai against Berserkers, right? So there's, some different synergies there you can do. And remember that Beni-Enma herself does have team player skills. While her role on your squad is probably going to be a primary damage dealer to a boss, she can use team defense down, team attack up, and team NP battery to, spice up your other units so that they can do AoE NPs to clear waves, so they can do support NPs to enhance or fort up Beni-Enma herself, etc. In terms of CEs, so keep in mind, again, the same principles. Anything that increases arts, anything that increases, anything that increases damage, period, but arts especially. Arts crits CEs will be good. So another side, decent option. You can go with Dive to Blue, though, since she doesn't have the perfect battery. I don't know if that 50% is the perfect number. She does have a max 20% battery, and you can K-scope her. The single target NP, I don't know if that's really worth it. But it's an option. If you're going to, pivot to Beni-Enma in a last wave, you can have her K-scope ready and just drop that MP charge. If it's maxed out, we'll talk about skills in a second. Other than that, no other CEs, specifically jump to mind. I would say focus on the pillars of your arts. You're going to want to arts up, NP up, maybe raw attack up if you have somebody else better to stick an NP or arts up on. And if you can afford it, a crit up as well. An arts crit up would be pretty decent, because you're probably gonna want her to crit on her arts cards or her quick card to get extra damage and extra NP gain out of it. So you can, if your first tap of that NP doesn't do it, you want to be able to spam it a little bit, which with the right support setup shouldn't be too hard, right? So in terms of Ascension and skills, we'll just briefly touch this. You can see them on the side. Not crazy, it's not a huge amount of feathers, but it is feathers. That may bother some people, so keep that in mind. She's a bird, it makes sense. The other thing you need to watch out for is skill reinforcement. It's not the worst, but that 9th skill level requires 18 bells, with her one before that requiring 6. There are units with worse numbers, but still, that's a brand new mat. That's pretty rough. You may be holding off on leveling those for a while, as well as 24 Magatamas per skill. So those higher level skill requirements can be a little brutal. Keep that in mind if you're raising her. Especially because you are probably going to want to get these skills maxed out, probably, so you can get some of your most of all out of them. Especially the small box effect for that full 20% battery. All in all, shouldn't be too complex for those early skill levels, though. Just, keep your eye on your feathers, and you may have to wait on those last couple skill levels, because they do take, like I said, Magatamas bells. Now, in terms of rate-ups, hey, guess what? If you really want Beni-Enma, you gotta try now. There will be a rerun of Daily Report of the Sparrows in next year. So, there's a rerun banner. Cool, great. But there will also be another brand new servant that has just come out for that. So there's this one, there's that one. Now, obviously, as a limited SSR, she will show up in future, like, GSSR banners and raid-ups and stuff, but I don't think she's been, like, tucked in to a lot of extra bonus campaigns or anything. So, fairly rare unit, and has a pretty decent niche. Like, obviously, I compared her to Nero Bride because they have the exact same attack stat. If you've already got a really, really good Bride, you probably don't need Beni-Enma, but that extra trait damage is pretty spicy, and she's got a lot of useful toolkits for semi-support and plays well with others. And I think that's everything in the mechanics. This one went on a little bit longer, but that's because I had to do research in that front half to talk to you about how that NP damage types will aid you. I hope it was helpful to you. You know, we talked through all the usual stuff. Stay tuned for, probably a weekish from now when you can get the Old Man Lee wanted. All right, I'm going to get out of your hair. Happy New Year's, everybody. And I wish you luck at the Sparrow's Inn. Don't forget to like this video if you liked it, if you're watching on YouTube. Leave any comments down below. You can also hit us up on our Discord. That link is, as always, in the video description and on our channel page. If you're new here and haven't already, please subscribe to our channel so you can get more episodes of this show, Wanted, about 5 stars, and various other things. I'm actually going to, we're going to have to do some work with Lucky, and we're producing some special Wanteds in this front half of the year on a couple of units that he's super excited about. We'll see how that goes. And you can also get our show, Let's Talk FGO, every week. Our regular podcast about FGO news, tips, and more. And other stuff, too. And even if you're already subscribed, considering that bell for notifications so you always know when we post a new video, like when I have to post a Wanted in the middle of the night sometimes. Or when we, do live streams, when we post new episodes of Let's Talk FGO. The full works. It's great. Hit that bell. You can also support us on Patreon, like I said at the front of the show. Could have gotten access to this episode early, and lots of other goodies like audio downloads, and it really helps us out. Okay, that's it. Bye, everybody. Ditchy.